Hello and welcome to BYJU'S IAS. Let's get started and look into our daily quiz. Let's look into the first question. With reference to extratropical cyclones, which of the following statements are correct? They have a clear frontal system, which is not present in the tropical cyclones. They can originate over both land and sea. They move from west to east. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is 1, 2 and 3. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article here makes a mention of cyclone. Let us try and understand what are the differences between the tropical cyclone and the temperate cyclone. When it comes to the tropical cyclone, they move from the east to west direction. What happens? You have the moisture that is collected by the wind. The temperature of the oceanic water is about 26 to 27 degrees centigrade. The moisture laden winds immediately makes a landfall, which is in the form of east to west direction, leading to the tropical cyclones. But when it comes to the temperate cyclones, they move from the west to the east and not from the east to west. When it is moving from the east to the west direction, it is the tropical cyclone. But when it comes to the temperate cyclone, it moves from the west to the east direction. A tropical cyclone has an effect on a comparatively smaller area than a temperate cyclone, which means the temperate cyclone impacts a much larger area in comparison to the tropical cyclones. The velocity of wind in a tropical cyclone is much higher and it is more damaging. So if it is a comparison of damage caused by the tropical cyclone and the temperate cyclone, which is more impactful, which will have more negative consequences, it is the tropical cyclone which will have major economic consequences on the economy. Tropical cyclones form only on the seas, but temperate cyclones can be formed both on the land and the sea. A tropical cyclone does not last for more than 7 days, but a temperate cyclone lasts for nearly 15 to 20 days. These are some of the major differences which is very important from the preliminary examination point of view. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following statements. The Central Institute of Indian Languages, Mysore, works on protection, preservation and documentation of all the mother tongues or languages of India spoken by less than 1 lakh people. UNESCO operates with 4 levels of language endangerment between safe and extinct. Which of the above statements are correct? The answer to this is 2 only. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the PIB makes a mention for scheme for protection and preservation of endangered languages of India. Before we understand what the scheme is all about, why did the government of India come up with such a scheme? There are a number of languages world over. They are either getting extinct or they have become endangered. So our question is, what is this endangered to a language? Basically, that language where people had been following, speaking for a considerable period of time is now at the risk of disappearing. It means that people who speak this particular language have passed away, or they have shifted to a new language and they are not speaking their native language. In such a case, a language will become endangered. If we have to look into the classification made by UNESCO, you have about 6 classifications and 4 between the safe as well as the extinct. So what is the safe language? That language which is spoken by all generations, intergenerational transmission is uninterrupted, not included in the atlas, is called as the safe according to UNESCO. Then you also have extinct language, which means there are no speakers left. It is included in the atlas if presumably extinct since the year 1950. So it is safe if people are speaking it. If there are no issues that they are getting transmitted from one generation to another, it is called as extinct if there are no people left speaking this language. This is where we get the degree of endangerment. What does it mean? Vulnerable if most children speak the language, but it may be restricted to certain domains, that is, they speak only at home. Then we have definitely endangered where children no longer learn the language as mother tongue even at homes. Severely endangered where language is spoken by grandparents and older generations, while the parent generation may understand it, they do not speak it to the children or among themselves. And we have critically endangered where the younger speakers are grandparents and the older, and they speak the language partially and infrequently. This is the classification. When it comes to India, we have number of endangered languages as well. So these endangered languages will have to be safeguarded. In case they are in a probability of getting endangered, what we require is one of the institutions, one of the schemes to protect them. That is what is called as Scheme for Protection and Preservation of Endangered Languages of India. So remember, this is an initiative taken by the Ministry of Education, where they will basically ensure that there is preservation and documentation of all the mother tongue languages of India, but it is not 1 lakh, but instead if it is spoken by 10,000 people and less, which is why the first option is wrong, the second option is right, and the answer to this would be 2 only. And to promote these endangered languages, we have the University Grants Commission, which has come up with 2 other schemes called as funding support to state universities for study and research in indigenous and endangered languages in India, and establishment of centers for endangered languages in central universities. These are the schemes initiated by University Grants Commission. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following pairs are correctly matched? We have the festival on one side, the state it is celebrated on the other side. Hornbill, Nagaland; Wangala, Meghalaya; Mayoko, Assam. The answer to this is 1 and 2 only. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the PIB makes a mention of the Hornbill Festival. The Hornbill Festival is celebrated in the state of Nagaland. Nagaland is known as the land of festivals. Why? Because each tribe celebrates its own festival with a lot of dedication and passion, which is why Nagaland is known as the land of festivals. And one of the important festivals that is being celebrated in this particular state happens to be the Hornbill Festivals. What are the objective of this particular festival? There are different types, as we discussed. All these types come together, they celebrate together, which is called as the Hornbill Festival. This is basically done to protect and promote the rich tribal culture of Nagaland, revive the traditions that have been existing in Nagaland, promote inter-tribal intersection, and at the same time promote tourism in the state of Nagaland, which helps tourists to go to Nagaland. The economy and its productivity increases over a period of time, and ultimately the tourists experience the custom, the food, the songs and dance of the different tribal communities in the state of Nagaland, which is why we have the Hornbill Festival, which is celebrated in the state of Nagaland. Where is the Wangla festival celebrated? It is celebrated in the state of Meghalaya. And when it comes to Mayoko festival, it is celebrated not in the state of Assam, but instead in the state of Arunachal Pradesh. Also remember, there are many other important festivals celebrated in India, and these can be prospectively asked in your preliminary examination. So kindly go through these festivals. Now let's look into the next practice question. Donbas conflict is a dispute between Greece and Turkey, France and United Kingdom, Russia and Ukraine, Belarus and Poland. The answer to this is Russia and Ukraine. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Hindu makes a mention of the Donbas region. This is a conflict between Ukraine and Russia. We have two regions, Luhansk, Donetsk. Both these regions together is called as the Donbas region. What is the conflict all about? You have Russian speaking people in these two regions. They want independent autonomy. They want more autonomy. They want Ukraine to give them more autonomy when it comes to the local relationship, and at the same time, if that is not being given, they are also seeking for an independent state. Russia is backing these separatist forces indirectly. Why? Because they are the Russian speaking people. On the other side, Ukraine is not ready to give this autonomic status to those separatist forces who are operating in this region. That is why we have the conflict in the form of what is called as Donbas region conflict. Now let's look into the next practice question. With reference to Indian freedom struggle, consider the following events: mutiny in Royal Indian Navy, Quit India movement launched, second roundtable conference. What is the current chronological sequence of the above events? The answer to this is 3, 2, 1. This happens to be a previous year question from the year 2017. So when we look into this particular Indian freedom struggle, we have the second round table conference which happened in the year 1931. Then we have the Quit India movement which happened in the year 1942, and mutiny in Royal Indian Navy which happened in the year 1946. So if we have to arrange them in the chronological order, we have the answer as 3, 2, 1. Now let's look into the fact of the day. The fact of the day for today's discussion is Paika rebellion. Who are the Paikas? They are the ones called as the warriors or fighters in Odia. They had a particular style of fighting called as Paika Akhada. It was patronized by King Kharavela. Because they were the warriors, because they happened to be the fighter class, they were engaged in the policing functions. As a result, you had the Gajapati rulers who had gifted them large swathes of land. That is why these Paika are the warriors who were called as the landed militia. They also acted as warriors to help the king during the wars. They were divided into Praharis who were experts in fighting with the swords, Bahuas, excellent marking men using matchlocks, Denkiyas, the archers in the battlefront. So these are the warriors who helped the Gajapati rulers, the rulers in that particular area, and they were gifted large swathes of land. But then you had the Odisha, which comes under the control of the Marathas, and eventually the Maratha rule came under the control of the British Empire. And what does the British Empire do? It started making changes when it comes to the administrative apparatus. One, they started imposing exorbitant taxes on these lands, which was given free of cost by the Gajapati rulers to the Paikas, and at the same time the Paikas were not allowed to make salt from the seawater, and this gave widespread dissatisfaction and hatred against the British. So what do? They raise up against the British, one for the reason that their free lands were snatched away, two because there was exorbitant tax rate that were imposed, and finally they were not allowed to make salt from the seawater. As a result of all these issues, you had the Paikas who went against the British Empire. This was led by Buxi Jagabandhu, who happens to be the commander of the military army of Kunda's Gajapati king, and Khurda was a kingdom near Puri, and he was one of the freedom fighters of India. Why have we taken this? Because this article makes a mention of Paika rebellion. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.